Look, thank you very much for joining me for another in our Power Talk series. So this is where we are going through different information, different topics to help people get the most out of their Power Diary account. For those that I haven't come across before, so I'm a co-founder. My name is Damien Adler. I'm one of the co-founders of Power Diary, and I'm also a registered psychologist here in Australia. I also have, my wife and I have a group private psychology practice that we started many, many years ago, and was sort of integral into the development of Power Diary. And we still have that, although my wife runs the clinic these days. Okay, so in this Power Talk, we are going to cover a few key sort of elements to preventing no-shows, and also how Power Diary can help you do that. So we're going to be looking at essentially how to set up cancellation agreements and engagement letters so they can be sent out using our forms function, how to set high-risk clients and set alert notes for those, how to sort of use the online bookings to reduce no-shows, and how you can configure that to collect payment as well as appointment reminders and payment collection. So we have a nice busy agenda, and we'll jump into that now. I've just got to quickly change a setting in the system here that isn't quite working as I'd like, so I'll just adjust that for 1 second. Okay, and we will kick off. Okay. So let's sort of have a think about, or just a quick talk about why no-shows matter, and why this is sort of worthwhile, and worth our time sort of going through and really understanding how we can kind of prevent these. And the thing to sort of look at is that often we sort of think about no-shows just in terms of often a single dimension. So we might think about the financial impact, which obviously has a very significant impact. And when we run sort of analysis on the impact of no-shows overall for health practices, what we find is often no-shows, the financial loss of no-shows, can be one of the most significant costs that a clinic experiences. Yet it's often hidden because essentially it's a opportunity cost. It's the lost opportunity to sell and provide a service during that time. But we know that beyond financial impact, there are other consequences. So reducing the ability to provide services to the community, and most health services at the moment are under significant pressure following as a result of COVID, and a lot of unmet need in the community. So a missed appointment, of course, means it's not only just that kind of opportunity to deliver the service, but it means that the community actually misses out on that service. We have the morale of the team. So I'm sure all of us have experienced, whether we are working individually or part of a group practice, that missed appointments really are, really sort of damage the morale of the team. People often feel really quite annoyed and frustrated, by that. And often we find that by the time, of course, an appointment, we realize that someone, for instance, is not turning up to an appointment. So in the case of a no-show, often we've already been waiting around. We've perhaps already tried to phone them to see if they're coming. And by the time we've realized that a significant chunk of that appointment has already been lost. So obviously we can't redeem, that time easily. The fourth reason we've got is, and this is sort of, I guess, from talking to practices around the world over this fairly significant length of time, the lack of engagement that occurs if we let no-shows run unchecked, and that becomes something that clients become to expect, or they don't sort of place a lot of value on the clinician's time, and they don't place the value on engaging and turning up to appointments. It essentially becomes a habit over time for clients not to attend, and also to drop the treatment to essentially be lower on the priority list. So we know that it actually sort of changes the way they think about treatment, and they'll place anything else that will sort of come in the way, or have a very low threshold for cancelling or not turning up, if that message has kind of been sent from the start all the way through that really it's not that important. Then we'll see that the clients will really sort of internalize that, and of course that becomes a self-perpetuating problem. Fifth reason is around establishing, mutually respectful relationships, with the boundaries. And this one, is fairly intuitive, but worth discussing. That if we don't frame that relationship, from the start, and really emphasizing that this is the sort of mutual expectation, if you like, of the treatment and of the relationship that's been established, then if we don't get that framed right, then everything following that often will sort of follow a similar pattern of there being a lack of respect or priority paid to that, or an issue with boundaries and understanding the sort of very nature of the relationship, that there is usually a professional and financial element to the relationship. And so being vague about that at the start, we know can cause, or has an increased risk of causing problems further down the treatment pathway. And finally, there's the obligation to assist our clients by not reinforcing unhelpful client beliefs or behaviors. And we know that, of course, clients do their best, but it's often from the worldview that they have developed through their experiences over time. And if a client's had a difficult run and then has developed beliefs about how the world should change to meet their particular circumstances. So they might say, well, I have difficulty with mood. Sometimes I can't attend an appointment, and everyone should just understand that. And whilst, of course, there may be a clinically relevant element to that should be addressed through treatment, it's not helpful to the client to then reflect that and reinforce that unhelpful belief that the rules of the relationship and the requirements that the clinic has to utilize their time effectively, that somehow that doesn't apply to them because of their circumstances. So being able to sort of set the tone from the very start in a respectful and proactive manner just means that we're setting up the clinic or the clinicians and the administrative staff to have a much better experience with managing the relationship as it goes forward. Okay, but of course we need to get our own thinking straight about this, and this is one of the things that we often find is that the way we think about non-attendance from the start, and the way we think about our own time and value really often becomes reflected in the way that a practice operates. And if we don't get our thinking straight, everything else after that. So a couple of quick points about getting our sort of thinking straight. So first of all, that clear understanding that an appointment is when a client books an appointment, it's a two-way commitment, that the client is reserving that block of time. It's a contract that's being formed to say we're reserving that, that time, and the clinic is committing to have their clinician available to provide that service at that time. So there is a two-way element to the agreement that is formed at that stage. We've got to remember that time is a perishable resource. And so when a client's making an appointment, we've got to remember they are booking and they are reserving a perishable resource that we can never sort of reclaim. And if we sort of think about that, and I think I've got a little graphic here that I'll sometimes use, is that if we think about it as a perishable item in the same way we can think about fresh fish. So strange analogy, but hopefully it will stick in your head. You imagine if you sort of contact a local fresh fish and chip fresh fish seller, and you put an order in for a large amount of fresh seafood, right? That seller is very likely going to want you to either prepay or put a deposit down on that order, because they know that if you don't come and collect and pay, that item is going to be have almost zero value, one day or so later. Our time, right, is far more valuable and far more perishable than anything that we could purchase like that. And it's very reasonable that we expect that if we reserve the time for the client, and we've made that commitment, that time is compensated, that we are paid for that. And whether something comes up or not for the client, that we've made it very clear that this time is reserved. It's an expectation they either attend that, give sufficient notice to cancel it to allow it to be rebooked, or cover the cost of that time, that they still pay for the time that was reserved and therefore and not used. Okay, very often we have this excuse of, or this reason that I have to work. And looking at the poll results that I have here on a little side screen, we can actually see that clients' work is, so the client needing to work is 27% of people have reported that that's the reason that is given, much of the time. Now, if we sort of think about this this idea of, I have to work. So really, if a client decides that despite having that appointment time reserved, that they are going to prioritize a change to their work schedule over that, really what they're saying is that my work, my last minute change to my work is more important than your work, right? More important than the time we've booked, more important than this precious sort of health resource that's been reserved, and are sort of making a decision to prioritize their own work and needs. And there may be circumstances where they have to do that to maintain, their commitments to the workplace, but that does not mean, in my view at least, that is a reasonable excuse to then to waste the time of clinicians that are already under pressure, already very motivated to try and provide services to as many people as possible. So it's, if clients have that, it's a good one to be able to have a sort of script already written for that you can respond to, or that your admin team can respond to be able to come back and say, look, we appreciate that, but as per our initial engagement agreement, we have this time reserved, and understand you may need to work, but we'll also need the cost of that missed appointment to be covered. It's best, to have a firm policy and make occasional exceptions, right? So, to start off with the client with a very clear set of expectations, then to do it the other way. So often, what we see when we're working with our customers and we're helping them with issues they might be having with non-attended appointments, that what we'll see is that often they will reverse the dynamic. So they might have a policy or a no-show policy that people have signed, but really it gets ignored most of the time. And it's only where someone has a repeated pattern of not turning up to appointments that they might make an exception and then actually follow through and charge the client for that. What we've seen is that, in fact, what works best is to reverse that, to have a very firm policy to begin with, to set it up like that with all clients, so that everyone is being accountable to that. And then, of course, there are exceptions that might come along that, as a clinic or as a clinician, that you view as reasonable, and then you can make those exceptions truly exceptions. So everyone is complying with the policy, but occasionally then you make an exception, and that means that you get everything running very smoothly, and then occasionally someone gets a pass because there are, of course, always things that do come up that you think are reasonable. Finally, there's this idea of being confident in the value and really holding and being confident in the way that we sort of present these these policies and the way that we talk to clients, about that. And, it's amazing that for the level of education, skill, and hard work that clinicians and health practitioners, put in to become, to be in a position where they're providing services in a private, context, an enormous amount of work. But often it's an area that people feel, clinicians feel very reluctant or uncomfortable about to enforce a no-show policy and to follow through and to charge clients for non-attended or late cancelled appointments. And so it's worth, if you feel uncomfortable or that makes you feel uncomfortable, it's worth just reflecting on all the work that has been put in for you to get to the point where you can, provide services, and the fact that there's lots of people who want those services, and asking that someone respects that time, and that they just cover the cost of any missed appointments is a very reasonable thing. And if you're still struggling with that, think about it in a slightly different way, and think about, would they cancel that appointment if the appointment was with a different profession? So let's say if that appointment was with a surgeon, would they cancel it, at the same, with the same reasons and the same circumstances? And it's I think very sort of helpful to sort of shift our thinking a bit sometimes, and think about that. And if we think no, they probably wouldn't, or they'd only cancel a surgeon's appointment if they had really, truly significant circumstances that came up preventing them to go. And then we know that really, where our time is not, being respected, and we need to just be, again, firm in what has gone into providing the service, and being confident about our requests, that people treat that, with respect. Okay, so let's think about the opportunities to intervene, because what often happens is that we will often find that practices can end up in a very reactive headspace, or reactive kind of intervention or reactive response, where they have detected there's a problem. So what we'll find is that practices may find that, okay, over the time we're getting lots of sort of no-shows, or we're getting this kind of really unhelpful pattern of attendance. And what we want to do is go right back and think about the opportunities to kind of send the message from the very start of the relationship with the client, and then reinforce that all the way through, and look at each of the different touch points as opportunities to kind of reinforce the message. And what that also does is enables us to present the message in a much more positive way, because when we're reacting and we're having to sort of talk to a client about the fact that we are now needing to charge them, or to talk to them about the fact that they've had a no-show or a late cancellation, it's often already in a fairly kind of negative and slightly tense space. If we are addressing it early, and we're following at each of the touch points, there's often then opportunity to be very, very positive about those the reasons for this and how it benefits them. By attending their appointments on time, by giving notice if there's cancellations, it means that the clinicians are more available. It's easier to book appointments. The engagement in treatment works better, and we have an opportunity to express that earlier, when there is more or less that sort of neutral feeling towards it, rather than when we may end up in a tense circumstance with a client who feels that they shouldn't need to pay a no-show. And it's very hard at that point to deliver any kind of positive element or positive messaging. Okay, so let's jump into these the different touch points and the ideas that we have along this, and that we've found over the years that practices use. And the practices, the things I'll go through now are things that we've found that practices who implement and use these sorts of strategies tend to have much lower no-show rates and late cancellation rates than those that tend not to. So that's really the reason I wanted to talk to you about this today, so that you can look at those ideas and see if any of them, you might find some, all or none apply. But I thought I'll go through and then at least sort of share what we've been able to see over the years. Okay, so the first is around this the initial conversation or initial contact with the client. So if clients are coming via your website and so forth, obviously it makes sense to have your policy there. And when I say policy, I don't mean just like a dryly worded the factual element of it, that if you need to give this amount of notice, but also the reason why, from a business point of view, from a workflow, from an engagement, to just explain to people why it's so important that they attend their appointment. So that initial contact, to have that there, website, or if it's via a phone call, if people ring up and book in their appointment, to have whether if you take the calls yourself, to be able to have a script that you can kind of follow, that just ensures that you consistently tick off that element of the booking, and of course it's even more important if you have administrative staff to work together to write out a very basic and be brief script to read out, but basically something so that that every single client at that initial contact has had the message communicated to them, and that's sort of setting the tone from the very start of the relationship. Then, of course, we're going to be sending out some sort of engagement letter or engagement documentation. And what we suggest around this is within Powder. And what I'll do is I'll bring across, I'll show you some things that I've put together on this just as an example. So hopefully you can see this okay. So the Okay, so we've just got a couple of tabs, set up here. So what we're looking at here is setting up some engagement letters, and what we've found, in in the past, people, pre-COVID, right? Often people would really only go through this information when people would come in and sit down in the waiting room, and then they'd hand them, some information to go through, or they might send out a snail mail or an email. But with COVID, of course, everything accelerated the adoption of everything being sort of online and needing to be able to communicate with people. And as part of that, we rolled out this forms feature, which allows people to collect information using secure forms, so that you can collect information remotely and safely from people. So I've got here an example of an engagement form. And this is where you can actually include all information, in relation to appointments and fees, confidentiality, all the things that we need to sort of we need to include, but also here around missed and late cancelled appointments, and so that you can put in a spiel in relation to those things, and then have the client sign it off. So I'll show you what that looks like from a client perspective, because this is something that you can easily configure. But from a client, you'll send, perhaps send them out an email or an SMS, which just contains a link to the form. They click on it, and this is exactly what they see. So this is a dummy client that I've got here. What we can see here is the list of all the things that were sort of covered in that, and then down here the person clicks, they put their name and they consent by signing, and then they just click on that to save it, and then that information has now turned up in this here. So now, in fact, what I'll do just to make it clear is I will just there we go, refresh this. So now we can see we're in a client's profile. So we're in under the client profile and then records forms. And here we can actually see that we've got this, completed form. And it's if we look at here to view the log to, we can also see that like exactly what's happened with this form when it was, I'll just refresh it so you can see it. So down here, we'll get all the latest data on it, but we can see here that the form was submitted and exactly the time that it was done. So that way, we've got a clear record, and we've said that right, from the start. Here is the information around it, and we can see that they have agreed and consented to that. Now, in terms of if you want to, I won't go into it in detail right now, but just as very quickly, if you want to set up forms, and we have help articles on how to do this, but if you go to here, Tools, Form Designer, you'll see that you're actually able to add new forms, create them, or you can import them from our library. So we have a library of forms that you can grab and then edit as you would like to. So that is so that's forms. So I'm just going to move that away again so I can move to a different section. But this is a good way to do it. It's great because then you get a very clear sort of sense of, or clear record of what's actually happened. Okay, so moving to the next touch point. So the person's made the initial contact on the phone, you've reminded them or told them about the policy, they've now received the form and they've consented to that. Now, prior to the appointment, we can set up automatic reminders. Now, the way that works, and I'm sure most people are kind of familiar with this, but I'll go through it quickly, is that you can set up email and SMS reminders that contain whatever content you like. So you can add your own message in that. What we suggest is that you add reference to, obviously you may not have the space to put your whole policy in there, but have a reference to the your no-show policy. So I'm going to grab this bunch of tabs here that I prepared earlier, and what we can see, if we look at this, that so we can see here. Let's say, so this is I'm going to use Amanda as an example here. So if we look at what was sent to Amanda, here's an example of the SMS that that went out, and just got a note here. Please note, fees apply for late cancellation. Now you can obviously change that to whatever whatever you like, but you can build that in so that there is a reminder that's sort of going out, and just that kind of prompt. So if someone gets that reminder, it just sort of brings to the forefront of their mind that if they want to, cancel it or cancel it late, they're going to incur a cost associated with that. So if something happens to come up where they're thinking, do I cancel or do I attend the appointment? It's fresh in their mind that, yes, there will be a financial kind of implication if they don't cancel in time. Additionally, clients can, with here where they can reply yes or no to confirm or cancel their appointment. So if you have that set, so you can see here in the example, I've said like, please reply yes to confirm or no to cancel. So what that means is that if everyone's automatically getting these reminders with, reminder about the no-show fee, but also a request to reply, you're able to see then on the screen anyone that hasn't replied. And we know then if they haven't replied, they're a much higher risk of a no-show. So in the example here that I've set up, what you can see is that all these appointments you'll see on the left-hand side have the green tab, the green sidebar here. So that indicates that the appointment status is confirmed. These people have replied yes, or you've manually changed the status in the calendar, but we know these ones are confirmed. You can see with Amanda here, she hasn't confirmed, there's no reply logged, and therefore that she is still pending. So if we were looking at the calendar for the next day or a couple of days ahead, we can see there's a high likelihood that Amanda is going to be a no-show, and it gives us an advanced opportunity to then jump in and address that. So we might then send just a custom SMS to Amanda to say, hey, we haven't heard back. Are you planning to attend the appointment? If your clinic would would see that as appropriate. Alternatively, you may have a policy that people haven't cancelled, haven't confirmed within 24 hours that the appointment is automatically reallocated to someone else. And particularly where people have lots of people waiting on their wait list, they can, you can simply kind of go in, be able to see on here, sorry, I just minimized that, but we can go on here and see, okay, the wait list and grab someone from there and put them into that slot. So that time, given we can see there's a higher risk of non-attendance, we're actually then able to use that time effectively, and importantly, we're addressing it proactively. Okay, the other option and what we would suggest people do is to have multiple reminders go out per appointment. And this is configured here. So if we go to, in fact, I'll do it on this one. So if we go to here to configuration here and then go to reminders, what we can see here is we've got the option to send multiple reminders ahead of time of an appointment. So you can actually send up to 3, and you can choose between SMS and email. So there's a cost, of course, with sending SMS reminders. So that's often, if you don't want to send, 3 SMS reminders for each appointment, that's perfectly, understandable. So you might have the SMS reminder be the one that the last one before the appointment, because you want to know absolutely that they're going to receive that. But you can actually set up a couple of email reminders ahead of time and just reminding them that this appointment is coming up. And then that way it's keeping it sort of fresh in their mind. And email reminders, of course, we don't incur any costs for sending email reminders, so therefore that it doesn't cost our users any extra to send them either. So there's absolutely no harm in having some email reminders going out ahead of time as well. And it just allows you to kind of reinforce the message. So in this example here, I've just gone into the communication activity just to show what our email reminder might look like. And it's just confirming the appointment that is coming up. And then you've got this opportunity here to mention again that there are fees that apply for late cancellation. Some people will actually link, if they've got a really nice write-up on their website about their no-show or late cancellation policy and explaining why it's so important for the clinic, and for clients, to turn up, they'll often just include a link there, so people can actually read up on that, if they would like, and provide a bit more context. So that's just a little quick about how you can get that and really sort of leverage both those reminder types as well as the confirmation, being able to see who hasn't actually confirmed, because we know that's going to be the highest risk patients. Okay, so let's move on to attendance at the clinic. So we're thinking about this again in terms of touch points, the different opportunities to jump in here. So the next one is if they are coming into the practice. So hopefully, as COVID, hopefully, touch wood, becomes less and less of a concern, we can have more people resuming their face-to-face appointments, and then again we've got these opportunities. So we have things like signs in the waiting room, and the importance of, again, reinforcing a positive message, because we know that if the message is presented as just the facts, just must attend, otherwise it's this, then people can view it as being punitive rather than understanding the reason behind it. And of course, trying to explain it to someone who's already annoyed retrospectively, that can be more tricky. So by having it there, it just means if someone's waiting there, they're glancing around, they're not at a state where it applies to them yet, that just reinforces this idea that it's important and it helps the clinic run smoothly. Then this element here is really vital. This, the clinician to go over this verbally in the first appointment. So being able to go through and actually reinforce the message with the client directly makes a massive difference. And when we've sort of been working with practice in the past and helping them, and they might be talking about an issue that they've had, we'll often find that they might have a lot of the other things attended to, but it's not being covered by the clinician. And the reason that it seems to make such a difference is that ultimately the relationship that the client develops is with that clinician. That's the relationship that has the most influence and the most pull. And so when the clinician sort of takes the time to explain the importance of that, and even within appropriate boundaries, explaining how it's important for that clinician personally to say, this allows me to utilize my time effectively and provide services to the most amount of clients, then it has a real impact. It seems to sort of stick in people's memories more, and it carries more weight. They're more likely, if they're thinking about not turning up or cancelling late, if they think about the impact that it has for the clinician, like I say, within appropriate boundaries of what you're comfortable sort of talking about, but having the clinician have that discussion first up makes a really significant difference. And in a similar manner, if there has been a no-show or there has been a late cancellation, there's often a tendency, and just as vulnerable to this, myself, when I was seeing clients, is that it may get attended to by administrative support, might have sort of dealt with it, followed up, and got payment. And there's often a tendency that we kind of want to move past that, and we don't want to really talk about it, or it feels a bit uncomfortable kind of needing to raise it. But again, what is very clear is that if a clinician just does gently raise that and just revisit that with the client, we end up finding there is much less repeating of the same sort of conduct. And interestingly, often clients are sort of relieved that there's been a discussion, because they can make assumptions sometimes about that, even if they've paid the no-show, but they can make assumptions that the clinician's going to be really annoyed with them and they're not mentioning anything, and so often it can lead to all sorts of scenarios coming up in the client's head. So by actually just being able to have a discussion, about it, then it helps in all directions, and we certainly see less reoccurrence of that going forward. Okay, so collecting payments. So this is always right where the rubber meets the road. We've done all of the preventative things that you can think of, but really, we now need to collect payment, and perhaps a no-show has occurred, and we need to we need to be able to get paid for that. The one of the kind of most efficient ways to do it, and again, it's going to depend on what each clinic is comfortable doing and how they want to set it up. But one of the most efficient sort of ways of managing this is really around storing the credit card details in the client profile, so that you can actually process the non-attendance fee automatically once if that has occurred. So now I've got here in brackets around with consent. So of course, to do this, you need to set it up from the start as part of your engagement agreement that if there is a no-show or a late cancellation, that the credit card will automatically be billed for that fee. But by being able to store it in, I'm just going to bring across these tabs here so I can just show you a little bit about what that looks like. So here we've got, if we're just looking at where we are in the profile. So we're in the client, in billing and billing setup. And to get this screen here, what I've done, I'll show you, I've just clicked on this add credit card. Okay, now there's a few different ways you can collect this, but this is how I'll show you this particular method first. And so this option appears when you integrate with Stripe. So Stripe is a online credit card payment processor. We have a native direct integration with Stripe, which ensures that we are sort of complying with all the requirements in relation to storing credit cards, because as most of you probably know, there's a different set of rules about storing credit cards versus storing normal health information and so forth. So people sometimes confuse the idea that because client records, medical records are encrypted and transferred securely and stored securely, and we have a whole bunch of security sitting all around that to comply with that set of requirements. People sometimes think that that means that they can store the credit card details in raw form in either a note or in part of the profile, because thinking, well, I know all that content is encrypted, so surely that is that's going to mean that I'm on safe territory in doing that. But in fact, the credit card processing industry, so it's a standard that is global, because I guess the nature of credit card processing is that it's global, but there's very set group of standards that needs to be met to store credit card details. And if you were to read the fine print on any of the credit card processing that you have with a bank or with something related to your terminal, you'll find there's content in there about not storing credit card details and any other kind of you can't put a copy in the filing cabinet, for instance. So by integration with Stripe, it means we're taking care of all that with you. These details here, they are stored and recorded in the system, but the way that that's done, it does it in a manner that it ensures compliance. So even, of course, the Paradise team, even our technical team, do not have visibility to the details that are stored. The way it's kind of set up is that you can process the charge, but no one can actually see the card details directly. So it's very important to keep yourself out of trouble that you use, if you're storing card details, that you're doing it in a compliant manner like this. So what it means is that a customer comes along or a client comes along, as part of that initial engagement, you can record their credit card details to begin with, and then you have them in the system. And that means that when if a no-show does occur, you can just go into that invoice and you can just process that charge, and it's done. And so obviously that's extremely efficient way of doing it. You can also make it easier to collect payments. So let's say you haven't got the card details stored, or in your practice you think that there may be, there might be reasons that you don't want to automatically process it. Perhaps you want to have a conversation, or you want the client to sort of take the responsibility of actually processing that payment themselves. Again, with the integration with Stripe, you can put this here, which is just a merge field, which allows you to include a link to pay the invoice. So you can then email out or message out an invoice for someone to print so they can see the PDF. But instead of them needing to then go and do a bank transfer or contact the clinic to make payment, they can just click on the link that they get, and what they'll see is be taken to a page like this. I'm obviously on a desktop, but if they're on a mobile device, it will adjust all neatly so that it will look nice and easy for them to complete. And what they do at that point is just add in their credit card details and click Pay Now. And that means that the amount that's sort of outstanding for the no-show is taken care of. It's processed very low effort on the clinic's behalf, but also for the patient. If they receive the email, click on it, enter their card details, pay, done. And we know that when people utilize and reduce the work required, then it's much easier to collect payments. Clients are far more likely to also pay that without complaint. The other benefit of using or being very efficient about your collection process is that we know the greater the gap between the no-show occurring and the attempt to kind of collect payment, the more resistance where you're likely to experience. So clients are more likely to negatively react to the idea of paying a no-show if there is a gap. And ultimately, the less likely the clinic is to collect that payment. So the faster it can be, the better all around. Of course, clinic gets the money for the missed appointment, which is important, but also for the client is dealt with there and then, and it's handled quickly. If there is delays in following through and getting payment, what can often happen is it becomes a compounding problem, because then the client becomes aware they need to pay the no-show fee. If that's 2 weeks later or something for the next appointment, they realize, oh, hang on, I have to pay for today's appointment that I'm about to attend, plus the previous no-show. And depending on people's circumstances, that might be out of reach to pay both of those together at that time. And then unfortunately what happens, rather than perhaps someone ringing up and just cancelling the appointment or discussing it ahead of time, what can often happen, because human nature being what it is, and we're all vulnerable to it, the clients may then avoid the appointment altogether. And so now we have 2 no-shows, and now we've got 2 missed appointments, and we're in a difficult position. We've got a much greater chance now that client is going to disengage from treatment, and there's going to be a rupture to the treatment process. So it comes back to this idea of the faster we can sort of jump in and take care of that side of it, the better it is all around. And it's really, can't emphasize enough that the feedback we get around that is really it's quite amazing. The other couple of things I want to just sort of to show you here in relation to these kind of payments, and I'm just going to bring that screen back up for a sec, is just what it looks like in the calendar, and just using some just some very kind of simple tricks in the calendar. So what we can see here, for instance, we've got this here. See how we've got a little $ here. So that's a setting that you can activate in your account to show unpaid, to show a little $ on accounts that have an outstanding amount, right? And so what this does is alert you. So if the person had a no-show fee sitting there, and they hadn't paid it, but you had allowed the next appointment to go ahead, it means that for the admin team, or if it's you doing your work, your admin work yourself, you're going to get a reminder that this client has an outstanding invoice, when you're looking at the calendar. So you're about to go into an appointment, you'll see it, it will sort of trigger a memory that, yes, I need to address that. And for admin staff who are always extremely busy and working very hard, then it means that there's a flag to remind them to collect the payment or to talk to the client about it. And what that does is reduce the risk, of course, that it goes unchecked. That it gets forgotten about for that the next appointment, and then later someone realizes, oh, we've got this outstanding invoice we haven't collected, and now what do we? It becomes more difficult and a little bit more awkward as well because you've had an appointment in between. So that's one trick to do is to set that, and you can configure that. I think here, if I am not mistaken, so it's in relation to being able to show the balances and be able to sort of show it in this sort of in the setup area of your calendar. So yeah, that's a very handy thing to be able to do. Some other tricks that you can do is you can set up client alert notes. So, well, I'll demonstrate how that works. So if we click on here and make a new appointment, and we're going to make it for Amanda, you see this thing that turns up, client alert notes owes no-show fee, right? So it's actually flagging when that appointment is being made that there is a no-show fee outstanding, and you can customize the message that you want very easily, and then you can save it. And what you'll see here is that it's also put an alert. So I've flagged, I've set this up that when you have that message display, you're going to actually get an alert that will color the background color. So you see the exclamation mark, and now the background color of this is orange. So that just alerts whoever's looking at the calendar to check on this. And then you can see here in the appointment details, it's been recorded that this client owes a no-show fee. So no one method is foolproof, but by utilizing some of these sorts of tools, it means that you can get a lot more of them and much less likely to kind of fall through the gaps. Now, if you're interested in where how to do this, so I'm just going to go into this client's profile to sort of demonstrate it. So I'll just click on this here, and we're going to go down into here to admin and then to manage. And then you can see it here. We've got this alert notes, so you can put in whatever message you would like to show up there. And then also I've clicked this one here, appointment warnings, so that we can actually warn that and flag. That was the thing that yellow backdrop that showed on the appointment to make it kind of really stand out more. So very easy to do, and then that way this will keep showing up every time an appointment is made. Now, if you really wanted to, if someone had a bunch of outstanding no-shows and you wanted them to be cleared before anything they could book, you could actually select this option here, new appointments blocked, and that would mean that if someone tried to make an appointment, they would see a message to say, hey, this client can't have a new appointment booked, and you can put a message in there to say what needs to happen. So it may be that, hey, they need to clear their no-show fees, or we need to have a discussion with them about it, or whatever it might be. So you've got options so that it's not coming back to you or your admin team or your practice manager needing to sort of think about this on a sort of client by client basis, because that's it's too much. Okay, so I'm just going to drop that off there. The other thing just on this and around supporting our the administrative teams is around thinking about what sort of, sorry, as I click on move my mouse slightly, it is scrolling through all this, so apologies for that. Yeah, so putting a note here where we've got, in this appointment notes, it's often handy too for the admin team. So if there's a note in there saying they've got an outstanding appointment, then it means that the administration person may not have to go into all the details. They can simply say, oh, hey, look, I see an alert in the system that just says you've got an outstanding amount to pay for a missed appointment. We'll just need to take care of that as we process today's. So it can mean that it makes it easier if there's a clear flag in the system for an administrative sort of staff member to be able to reference that fairly lightly and almost, just referring to this is what the system says. And that's particularly helpful if you've got administrative team members who are really uncomfortable with those conversations, or it's a skill they're sort of still developing. having just a flag or a note in there just sort of allows them to externalize it slightly and just be able to kind of reference it, and then kind of just move on with the conversation. And we find, again, people are more likely to actually have that conversation with the client and more are likely to get collected when that is implemented. Let me try and click this now without moving it in the wrong kind of way. Right, so the key, thing, here is around, when we think about the ongoing role. So we've talked about the, all the way through to now the ongoing rhythm of treatment. We've got to be consistent around the enforcement of no-shows, and to think about having an escalating set of sort of consequences around what happens if we've got someone who is not attending on a regular basis, and having a think about that and an agreement around that within the practice ahead of time. Because implementing no-shows and being more firm about it, it's essentially a habit that everyone kind of has to get into within the practice, but also a habit for clients. And like all habits, it takes more work sort of upfront to do it, but over time it becomes sort of easier and easier. But we need to sort of, I guess, define that clearly upfront and make sure that we're consistent in reinforcing this, and making sure that's getting kind of followed up, and that if a client gets to a point where there are a pattern of this, then it may be that you move to a position that the appointments need to be prepaid, and we've seen that work quite successfully, with lots of practices where they've had clients that they keep engaged, but they'll have a policy with them that you need to prepay 48 hours prior to your appointment. If we haven't received payment by that time, then appointment will automatically be cancelled, reallocated to someone else, and then it enables the practice to continue servicing the client, which sometimes there may be clinical reasons they want to do that, but also still be able to enforce the boundaries and the requirements around that. Okay, the other, just before I kind of get into the final sort of summary, I wanted to just reference the client portal and how this can sort of be utilised in a really effective way. And this sort of also goes to this idea of prepayment as well as actually deposits. Okay, so the client portal, for if you don't happen to be using the client portal, it's an online booking. So it's an online booking option for the client. So you place a link either on your website or in your text messages and so forth. I'll show you actually what it looks like. I've got those screens sort of pre-prepared to show through the process. But this is the client portal here, so that client might want to you set it up, and you can configure the behavior of all this, but they're going to select the locations, select the appointment time that they might want. They can go through the whole process and then see the final kind of final option to confirm the appointment. And of course, as we've got on the screen here, the client portal allows you to do a couple of really key things when it comes to managing payments. So the first you can see here is that I've got this particular service set up that the booking to be done on the client portal requires a deposit. And to show you where that is, it's in this tab here. So if we go to set up services, click on the service that you want to edit. If you've got the credit card billing, so you've got the Stripe integration operational, or you're using that integration, you will then see this option here appear, so portal deposit. If you put that a deposit amount in, and as you can see, you can customize that to whatever value you like, then it means that when they get to this stage, they actually need to enter their credit card details and pay for that upfront. And we know that if clients pay a deposit or they fully pay for an appointment, then the risk of a no-show or a late cancellation goes down dramatically, because they've taken an action where they know that their money has already been committed, it sits in people's memories better, they're more likely to sort of prioritize that. So that's the deposit option. You can also, and I think I set one of these up to be able to show you. Yeah, so this is where if it's not deposit, if you want to just collect full payment, then you can, instead of having a deposit, you just leave that blank. And you set your client portal to require payment at the time of booking. And so now we can see that it's asking for the full value of the appointment to be paid. And if your client portal is set to not accept bookings unless it's fully paid, then they literally won't be able to book the appointment without that payment. So the practices that kind of use this functionality, of course, means that it's very efficient because the clients are managing their own appointments and payments. So no-shows, reduce, and it also saves admin time as well at the end of an appointment, not needing to process payment. Now, if you want to look at where to customize this, if you go to Setup and then Client Portal, you'll see the options here. And the one that we're looking at specifically is this here, credit card payments required when booking. And we've got the options here that it could be disabled. So you either don't integrate with Stripe, or you do integrate with Stripe but just don't want to collect payments on the portal. So that's perfectly fine. So you can disable it or make it optional. So optional literally just gives the patient the option of paying. So when they get to that last screen, confirming the details, then it says, hey, you can pay this if you like at this time. So some people, let's say they're booking in for their kids, they would rather, the adult might be booking the appointment in, the parent books it in, they'd say, yep, I want to just pay that so that it's done, the child can come in and not need to worry about payment. So that's a great option for that. But then other clients who may prefer not to, then they don't need to. For this particular demonstration, I've clicked here on required so that it will actually enforce it. And then that way it will sort of take care of that for you. Okay, so, quick summary then, is, number one, have a no-show cancellation policy, included in your engagement letter and a form that goes out. Collect those deposits or prepayments. Have your alert notes so you've got constant reminders. Reinforce the message through your appointment reminders, and utilize email as well as SMS, so you can get like a double batch of sort of messaging happening there. Definitely use that waitlist. So if there's appointments that are not confirmed, and then and you've got it written into your policy, then you can slot those non-confirmed appointments out and just put them, reuse that spot. And of course, training our admin staff with scripts and tools so they feel comfortable in knowing what to say and how to say it means that much less likely to avoid it. Okay, so any questions? Hopefully you've been able to ask questions as we kind of have gone through, and I'm aware we're just out of time, so we won't do live Q&A right now other than what's already been dealt with, but we have our support team available as always, to help. So you can send in, of course, a support email to ask questions, but also use live chat that we have on our site, or you can actually book a call and a direct one-on-one with one of the team members who can screen share with you, help you get anything you want sort of set up. And if there's things like, if you were listening to today's presentation, went, look, that sounds great, but it's all a bit of a blur, not quite, so you're not sure how to do it, hey, jump on, book a call, book a time with one of our team members, and they'll actually walk you right through it, help you get it all set up and running, answer any questions that you might have, and away you go. So don't hesitate to let us know. So finally, thank you very much for your attendance. We've had lots of people joining today, which is great to see, and we'll also be making this available as a recording and sending that out to everyone. So thank you very much, and I will see you at our next Power Talk. Bye for now.